You know, in the long, winding story of human civilization, only a handful of creations actually survive the erosion of time to become truly immortal. And right at the top of that list, Homer's Iliad. This is a story so incredibly powerful that it shaped ancient kings, inspired world conquerors, and is literally still echoing across our cultures over 3,000 years later. Welcome to this epic explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of Homer's absolute masterpiece to explore the legendary war that burned a magnificent city to the ground and forever changed human history. So let's start at the very beginning with the ultimate question. Why did the Trojan War actually happen? I mean, most of us immediately picture massive armies, right? Bronze shields clashing, that famous giant wooden horse. But long before any heroes ever set foot on the blood-stained sands of Troy, the real spark of this world-ending conflict was, well, it was a petty argument, a divine dispute at a wedding banquet up on Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods. Chapter 1, The Golden Apple. We kick off our chronological journey at the wedding of a mortal king named Peleus and a water goddess named Thetis. This was the event of the century. Every major deity got an invite. Well, almost everyone. They purposely left off Eris, the goddess of discord, because obviously she ruins everything. True to form, Eris crashes the party anyway. But she doesn't just make a scene, she brings a prop. She rolls this glittering golden apple right across the banquet table, and inscribed on it are just 4 words, "To the most beautiful." That single phrase instantly ignited a vicious world-altering rivalry between 3 heavyweights. Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Now Zeus, being pretty smart, absolutely refuses to judge this impossible beauty contest. Instead, he passes the buck to a young mortal shepherd. And that shepherd? He just happened to be Prince Paris of Troy.
Look at the sheer scale of the bribes these goddesses threw at him. They weren't just striking poses, they were offering total world domination. Hera promises Paris the rule of all Europe and Asia. Athena guarantees him absolute flawless victory in every battle he'll ever fight. But Aphrodite, she takes a totally different angle. She promises him the love of the most beautiful mortal woman alive. Forced to make a choice that would literally rewrite destiny, the young prince goes with Aphrodite. He chose love.
Chapter 2, The Abduction of Helen. This brings us right to the direct fallout of Paris's choice, which triggers the core conflict of the whole epic. You see, the most beautiful woman alive was Helen, the queen of Sparta. There was just one massive problem. She was already married to the Spartan king, Menelaus. But under Aphrodite's magical spell, Helen is swayed by Paris, and they flee across the sea to the impenetrable fortress city of Troy. And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating from a historical perspective. Human tastes change, sure, but our core storytelling themes, they're practically immortal. This whole narrative, a ruler's wife being abducted, taken to a fortified stronghold, and sparking an apocalyptic war that burns the city down, it perfectly mirrors other foundational myths. Take the ancient Indian epic, the Ramayana, for example. The demon king Ravana abducts Sita, which sparks a colossal war that ultimately burns the island of Lanka. The cultural parallels here are just staggering. Just think about how incredibly fast this escalated. Over the course of basically 4 days, a single slighted goddess caused the complete mobilization of an entire Greek alliance. Years prior, all the kings of Greece had sworn a sacred blood oath to protect Helen's marriage at all costs. So the second Menelaus realizes his wife is gone, his brother, the wildly powerful King Agamemnon, calls in the oath. Suddenly, legendary heroes like Odysseus, Ajax, and the invincible Achilles are drafted. 1,000 ships are launched. Chapter 3, The 10-Year War. We cross the Aegean Sea with this massive armada and crash right into a grueling, brutal, decade-long brick wall. Troy was insanely rich, proud, and protected by these magically reinforced walls that no army could crack. And inside, the Trojans were led by their greatest defender, Prince Hector, Paris's older brother and a guy with just unmatched honor and skill on the battlefield. For 10 long years, the Greeks are stuck camping on the beaches. And this exact moment of devastating stalemate, this is actually where the text of Homer's Iliad begins. The Greeks are struggling, big time. To make matters worse, their wildly arrogant commander, Agamemnon, kidnaps the daughter of a priest of Apollo. When the priest begs for her back, Agamemnon just viciously insults him. So Apollo retaliates. The sun god unleashes a terrifying plague on the Greek camp, wiping out men and animals in droves. Agamemnon is finally forced to give the girl back to stop the plague, but to save his own bruised ego, he confiscates a war prize that belonged to Achilles. Feeling completely disrespected, Achilles, who is, without question, the Greeks' ultimate weapon, just packs up his gear, withdraws his troops, and absolutely refuses to fight. Chapter 4, Achilles versus Hector. Okay, this brings us to the absolute emotional and moral climax of the epic. With Achilles just sitting in his tent, the Greeks are facing total annihilation. Hector leads a ferocious Trojan counterattack, pushing the Greeks right back to the edge of the water. Unable to watch his friends get slaughtered, Achilles' closest companion, Patroclus, begs to borrow Achilles' legendary bronze armor just to go out and scare the Trojans. Achilles says yes, and it works. Patroclus turns the tide, but he pushes his luck way too far. He accidentally kills a mortal son of Zeus, which, as you can guess, is a terrible idea. The gods actively step in to manipulate the fight. Apollo actually sneaks up behind Patroclus, strikes him in the back, and knocks off his armor. Exposed, stunned, and totally defenseless, Patroclus is finally killed by Hector. When Achilles gets the news, that tragic loss instantly morphs into an unstoppable, terrifying fury. He hits the battlefield like a literal force of nature, slaughtering Trojans until the rivers run red. Finally, it comes down to a one-on-one duel with Hector. Achilles knows exactly where the weak point is in the armor Hector is wearing, because of course it's his own stolen armor. He drives his sword right through Hector's neck. But just killing him isn't enough. Achilles ties Hector's body to the back of his chariot and ruthlessly drags him through the dirt for days. It is a horrifying desecration of a truly noble prince. And then we get what is probably the most profoundly human moment in the entire story. In the dead of night, the elderly King Priam of Troy sneaks past the guards and right into the Greek camp. He walks into Achilles' tent, falls to his knees, and says these absolutely heartbreaking words: "I have kissed the hands of the man who killed my son." He just wants Hector's body back so he can place coins on his son's eyes to pay the ferryman in the underworld. Hearing this completely broken father, Achilles' rage finally shatters. He weeps and he returns the body. And right there, with the funeral of Hector, that is where Homer's Iliad ends. Chapter 5, The Fall of Troy. Now, while the Iliad technically wraps up there, the Trojan War certainly does not. To see how the whole shebang ends, we have to pull from other ancient myths, like the Odyssey and the Aeneid. The Greeks still couldn't crack those walls, right? So brute force gets swapped out for pure, calculated cunning. Enter Odysseus and his masterstroke of deception, the Trojan horse. The Greeks build this enormous, hollow wooden horse and stash their most elite killers right inside its belly. Then, the rest of the army hops on their ships and fakes a full retreat, hiding just over the horizon. They leave one guy behind to sell a massive lie. He tells the Trojans the horse is a sacred offering to Athena, and if they bring it inside their walls, the city will be magically protected forever. The Trojans, completely drunk on this fake victory, actually drag their own doom right through the front gates. They party deep into the night. But at midnight, the trap springs. The Greeks slip out of the horse in dead silence, slaughter the watchmen, and throw the massive city gates wide open for the returning army. The massacre that follows is cinematic, fiery, and completely absolute. Troy is destroyed from the inside out, fulfilling the dark prophecy made when Paris was just a newborn, that he would be the destruction of his own empire. But the Greeks pay a massive price for this victory. Remember how Achilles' mom, Thetis, dipped him into the magical river Styx when he was a baby to make him invincible? Well, she had to hold him by one heel, which meant that single tiny spot stayed totally dry, untouched by the magic. Amidst the chaos of the burning city, Paris, who is, let's be honest, arguably the weakest warrior in the whole epic, fires a poisoned arrow into the fray. Guided by the vengeful god Apollo, that arrow finds the one and only place it could do any damage: Achilles' undipped heel. And just like that, the invincible warrior falls. Wrapping this all up, it's just wild to think about the cultural staying power of this story. 3,000 years later, these exact concepts are still incredibly active in our modern world. I mean, we still call a fatal flaw an Achilles heel. When we talk about a subversive computer virus or a sneaky political trick, we call it a Trojan horse. Homer's poetry didn't just document a mythic war, it permanently, literally rewired human vocabulary. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought for today's explainer. Throughout this entire epic, we watched the gods send plagues, deflect arrows, whisper in dreams, and essentially force the outcomes of human lives. So, When we look back at the Iliad, we really have to ask ourselves, if the gods could so easily manipulate our choices back then, do we truly have free will today? Or are we all just unknowingly playing our parts in some pre-written tragedy? It's a question just as immortal as the story itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into ancient history. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.